So I thought because I shoot a lot of gym videos that this would actually be pretty easy. I was dead wrong. So about a year ago, I decided to start advertising on The Knot and on, I think it's called The Wedding Wire, for actually shooting videos on my own. This was paid advertising that I paid for, probably cost about, I want to say it costs about $2,500 for the year in order for you to be able to advertise on those websites. I don't have anything against spending money on advertising. So to me, it seemed like a good idea. And weddings has been one of those things that I actually wanted to get into. Now, that puts me to what I'm about to talk about right now. Wedding videos are not like shooting anything else. And I made a bunch of mistakes, and I want to see if maybe I could help some people out there either one, realize whether or not they actually want to do weddings, or two, maybe just learn from some of my mistakes. So let's get into some of those. So number one, let's start with negotiating the wedding. So mistake number one that I made was right off the bat, the customer did not want to spend nowhere near enough money for what she actually was expecting. So I feel like one of the things you should do is actually negotiate to, basically negotiate everything up front. Do not leave anything up to chance. And make sure that when you negotiate with the client that you set the expectation off the bat. For example, she only wanted to pay for myself. She did not want to pay for me to have an assistant. Usually I charge $500 extra for that extra person to come along with me to actually go on a shoot. She did not want to pay for this. Another thing is, and I say she because most of the negotiation I did was with the wife, with the bride. So another thing is too, like she wanted a lot of shots of her getting dressed, right? I am a male and I didn't feel comfortable shooting her getting dressed. She didn't feel comfortable me shooting her getting dressed. And I really wanted to have, a second shooter, a female actually there to actually shoot those moments so that we wouldn't miss any of them. So that was actually the first mistake I made. I did not negotiate upfront what she was expecting versus what she was paying for. Her budget was, I think, set at $2,000. And that basically paid for me for 6 hours and for, 2 cameras. And, that was pretty much it. So off the bat, negotiating, super important. You should definitely do that up front and don't leave anything up to chance. So another thing that I would say was a big mistake was the gear trap. I brought not enough gear and too much gear at the same time. How is that even possible? That's possible because you bring the wrong gear, and I brought the wrong gear for the job. I should have brought, like, for example, a light. I should have brought extra mics, and I should have brought a lighter setup than what I bought. Honestly, you don't even need to cage out your camera for something like this. You should definitely have your cameras out of their cage for the most part on tripods and on gimbals. So for this shoot, I brought 2 cameras. One was supposed to be on a gimbal. The other one was supposed to be in a tripod. And, I had them pretty much rigged out and it was so heavy. So my R5C was rigged out and that's a pretty heavy rig once it's all said and done. And then my S5, once you throw a big lens on it, cage, top handle, and it just becomes heavy and it's just not what you should be doing at a wedding. You should think light, lightweight, fast. That's what you should be thinking on the wedding. And definitely don't just bring one tripod. I had 2 tripods, but what I was really missing for this was a monopod. So that's something that if I keep doing weddings is something that I would probably do. Is definitely bring a monopod. A monopod is just simple. You could kind of like drop it, move it around. It's way easier. And I think it would have made my day a whole lot easier. And, or I should say way better. So yeah, so definitely gear list should be one of those things you should do and go over it and make sure that you don't overpack and make sure that you don't underpack on some of the things you actually need. Another giant mistake was the audio mistake. So I brought enough audio equipment to record the ceremony and everything that was going on around, right? One of my mics wasn't fully charged. One of my wireless mics, it was actually the lapel mic that I had. It wasn't a lapel mic. It was a lapel mic, but it was battery powered and the batteries were dead. I didn't realize it was. The groom had it on him and it was good when we first put it on, and then halfway through they must have died and I lost some of the audio. So the audio is super important. And that brings me to another part of the audio. So when I actually started rendering the video for the client, I somehow scrapped some of the audio. So some of the audio for the ceremony was actually not on the video, and it sounds horrible. It's from the other mic, and it just tells you how important audio is when it comes down to shooting a wedding, because you're just capturing this moment and you only have one shot at it. So you're under a lot of pressure. So don't sleep on that. Make sure you get good audio. Make sure you have some good audio equipment. Do not skimp out on this part. Like, don't buy the cheap, Amazon $100 mics. It's just not worth it. Just bring some good mics, make sure they're fully charged, and make sure you're ready to go. Another thing that I wish I would have done better was caught a lot more of the micro moments, the small things, the little details. I did get a lot of details, but I just don't feel like I got enough. And, it could be part due that it was just myself that was handling the whole wedding, and I needed an assistant, and I should have negotiated an assistant based on what her criteria was for the wedding, or I just didn't get enough. So, I could go both ways on this. I could have probably used an extra hand to get some extra details, or B, I should have just been there a lot earlier to get, details of everything. Now, I will say the wedding was running late the entire time I was there. I was there an hour and a half early, and everything was behind by 2 hours. And I don't want to say this, just in case, but it was kind of like a bridezilla thing. Like, it was all about her, and I get it, but she wanted full control over everything, and it made it really hard for all the vendors and everybody who was working for the wedding to actually provide her with the service she was actually looking for. So it's almost like she was just getting in her own way. But, that's beside the point. At the end of the day, you need to get more micro moments. You need to get more of that small stuff. Don't be afraid to get ahead of the line, get in front of the photographer if you have to. Just tap them on the shoulder, be nice, and say, hey, can I get this shot? Can I get in here? Because if you're timid, you won't get the shots, and you need to be able to. So if you're shooting your first wedding, what you should focus on. These are the things that I will focus on. Number one, have a small gear list of the things you think you need, and bring extras. So if you're have batteries, bring double the amount of batteries you think you're going to need. Charging batteries while you're waiting, I think are going to be a problem. So I would bring a lot of batteries. I would bring mic solutions, at least 3. I know it sounds like redundancy, but bring at least 3 different mic solutions. I think it will help you in case of a jam. And I could have used that extra help, trust me. Focus also on the little details. Focus on the small things. I think they're important. I did Tomorrow's Filmmaker a few years ago, and I went through their wedding thing, like their whole class on weddings, and that was pretty helpful. So I would probably go off and just buy it. I think it's like $100, or either Tomorrow's Filmmaker or Future Filmmaker. I don't know what it was called. I'll put it in the link below, the class that I took, and I think it was pretty inexpensive. Try to catch those candid moments between the groom and the bride and family members. I think it's pretty important. I would focus on making sure you get your shots, making sure you do the best job possible, because that's all you could really offer at the end of the day, whether you're prepared or not, or whether it becomes a disaster. For me, the wedding was a total disaster only because of the ceremony. I ended up refunding her the whole amount. I didn't even take a payment. I was so pissed off with the whole situation. I was just disappointed in myself, and I didn't feel like they should pay for that. Ultimately, they got a great deal. So just make sure you focus on the things up front. Don't try to, come up with it last minute, because it will not help. You need to make sure that you focus on getting all your details, getting all your gear list, getting everything ready up front. So that's probably one of the things I would do. Now, the last thing I'm going to get into is whether I would shoot a wedding again. So I don't know if weddings are for me, to be honest with you. And I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that. I like documentary style filmmaking. I like shooting action. I like shooting all that stuff. And weddings, I don't know if it was the last, I mean, I've done 3 so far, and I don't know if each one of them, it just felt rushed. It felt like you really don't know what people are expecting, and you're just trying to do the best job possible. I probably would do it again. I would definitely negotiate up front a lot more than listen, you're working harder than the photographer. I'll tell you right now, you're working harder than the photographer. You're working hard. It's a hard job. So make sure that you get paid accordingly. The days of like me shooting $500 weddings there's no way in hell. I don't even want to do a $2,000 wedding, because from the time that I went there, drive time, setup time, I probably worked 12 hours on that wedding. I charged $2,000, and it was probably another like 4 hours of editing. Or maybe more. It probably was more because there was some revisions in there. So I would consider that like a 20-hour job at $100 an hour. It sounds like it's worth it, but then you start throwing media in there and things you have to invest in, and it's not worth it. You really need to be like around $2,500, $3,000 to make it worth your while, if you ask me. So if I were to do it again, I would make sure that I would charge right, and I would have an assistant. I think it'll go a long way. So I hope this helps somebody out there. If you're, thinking about shooting a wedding this season, because, season's coming up. If you're thinking about doing any of that kind of stuff, feel free to reach out. Or if you have any of your wedding disasters, I would love to hear them. So put them in the comments below, because I'm just dying to hear what other people say. I'm not a professional wedding videographer. This is just something that I've been experimenting with. So again, take my advice. Don't take my advice. It is what it is. But into the next one. Peace out.